Hello, this is Ross Marquand.
This is Cooper Andrews.
Hi, my name is Coleman Domingo.
Hey, I'm David Morrissey.
Hey there, I'm Greg Nicotero, and you are listening to
the CINIKRADIO podcast. Now, your hosts, Igrihe and Cinik.
That's right, folks. We are here and back again live, and I want to thank you all for joining us on this fantastic June 25th evening for what I've deemed the incredible show. On this week's show, well, we get the honor and pleasure of sitting down with professional wrestler Shawna Reed, and we learn about her career and what drove her to follow her dreams and become a professional wrestler. And then, if that's not enough, Ryan George is back with us. He's done globetrotting and gallivanting his way across the UK, and he's in the saddle for us to break down a pretty good Incredibles 2 movie from Disney. All that and more, and it starts now. Hey, Ig. So how you feeling about this live show?
You know what? I think it's a really good time, and I hope that people are out there listening and thinking about calling in, and you can call in. You can ask us questions, 657-383-0347. We're here, and we're here to talk to you. We're going to have a good time this week. I mean, I can't wait to talk to this wrestler. The Incredibles was a fun movie. We've got some news to talk about. There's a lot of things going on, and I think, if you're listening, hopefully you have some fun tonight.
And more importantly, Ryan George should be joining us at some point in the program, which I'm extremely excited about.
Yeah, I had sent out an APB for him. I thought he was missing. I called his mom. Seems everything is fine, and I was overreacting. But, yeah, he's coming back, and, we missed him. We're glad he's back.
Yeah, the Georges are a well-traveled bunch. I will give them that. I mean, out there in Ireland, sending us pictures of Star Wars sites, and yeah, that was really cool. And some a little bit of Game of Thrones action, which I didn't realize how heavily CGI'd that town was.
Well, it has to be. I mean, the thing is, I don't think there's anywhere in the world that actually looks like the Red Keep. Especially when you see it from like outside the city and you see the coastline coming up to it. You got to make it look like it's a kingdom, like it's the seat of a kingdom in that era. And, they do a really good job with it. The CGI, I mean, they surprise me time and time again. The amount of detail that Game of Thrones and HBO does with that stuff, it's always amazing.
And they're just ramping it up. I think they said something like the Battle of the Bastards took, 12 or 13 days to shoot. And the final battle in the series took somewhere around a month. So we're really in for it as fans. I mean, I absolutely cannot wait for Game of Thrones to come back. Our guest tonight is one of the most inspiring stories I've come across on social media, going from almost couch potato to one of the most exciting up-and-coming independent wrestlers today. The stubborn angel herself, Miss Shawna Reed, joins the program. Shawna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
So, Shawna, it's been a pretty incredible ride for you, and we've got some questions about how this has gone. It's a pretty inspiring story. I mean, what drove you from the gym and then to the ring?
I've always been a wrestling fan when I was little, and then I got I kind of went out of it, then got severely bullied and things like that in school, and always had wrestling in my my heart. But then I started going through, depression and anxiety and things like that, and became like you said, a little couch potato, and an introvert, didn't really talk to anybody or do anything, and then got back into wrestling as a fan, and then knew I always wanted to do it when I was younger. So I decided, why not give it a shot? And pretty much that's how it got back into the ring.
How long did you have to train before you had your first match in front of people? And tell us about your first match.
I started training in September of 2015, and I ended up getting hurt in about a month into my training, so I had to sit out for a little bit. But I still went to every single practice and took notes, and that just made me want to get back in the ring more. And I restarted back up in March that next year, and ended up, no joke, I started back up in February that next year. And then 3 weeks back into my training, I got a text message from my trainer saying, do you want to wrestle tomorrow? And I messaged him back you mean on a show in front of people? And he said, yeah. And I immediately, said, no, declined it. I'm not ready. But he kind of talked me into it, used the phrase, if you don't trust yourself, trust me. So kind of couldn't say no to that. And ended up being for Bobby Fulton. And my first show ended up being also in front of over 1,000 people with someone I used to look up to when I was little, Road Warrior Animal, being on the show. So it was pretty intimidating.
Those are some big names in wrestling, so your first time out, that has to be a little intimidating. Hold on just 1 second, Shawna. We have a caller.
Hey, Cinik Radio Podcast. How you guys doing? This is Tom and Jay Eat.
What's going on?
I was just calling to say how fantastic your podcast is. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on Tom Clancy's The Division 2 coming soon?
Well, The Division 2 looks like it's going to be an excellent game. It looks like they went back and they fixed some of the problems in the past. And it looks like it could be something that I might be interested in playing long term. I'm definitely going to follow it. Egg, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that completely. It looks like the playable area is going to be almost set exactly to scale the way it should be. Looks like it's going to be about 3 times the size. And it looks like they've done a lot of balancing and made it more fun where you're not getting just beat up just so easily, like you actually have a chance. It looks fun. It looks like it'll be a good game, and really, I can't wait for it.
All right, Shawna, you were part of a stable called the 5 Most Wanted. Tell us about the group and who else is in it.
It's a group of guys. I'm the only girl that pretty much are kind of legends in wrestling. Sean Casey, Cody Hawk. We have our manager, David J. Getz, and then we also have Big John Murray, who's also seen on Rock of Love with Bret Michaels. So it's pretty much just a group that likes to go out and have fun and, you know, do what we do in the ring and look good doing it.
Stables are important, from the Bullet Club all the way to the NWO. I mean, they can either kick your career into the stratosphere or just make you fall flat on your face. Would you agree?
Yes, definitely.
So if you were to have a dream opponent, like from the past or somebody wrestling now, who would your dream opponent be?
Either AJ Lee or Trish Stratus.
Who were some of your wrestling heroes growing up, both men and women?
Shawn Michaels, Trish Stratus, The Undertaker. Kind of controversial, but definitely Chris Benoit. He was the one who really even got me first into professional wrestling. Mickey James. So I kind of like gravitated towards like the darker, kind of scarier characters. Like my first 2 favorites were Undertaker and Kane. I was all about them. And then it kind of, you know, gravitated into Shawn Michaels, and Shawn Michaels is still my favorite to this day.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a wrestling mark myself, and I always liked the darker characters like Undertaker, or Kane, or even Raven or Vampiro.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up watching them.
Raven a few months ago. That was
How's
awesome.
he doing?
He's good. Yeah, it was really cool.
They're just more interesting. You know, the heel is always just, they can have a whole lot more fun. So you said you're the only girl in the group of 5. So was it harder to break into the business as a woman?
Oh, God, yeah. Our business is very, you know, male dominated. So, and a lot of people don't like female wrestling, which is now making a break. Like, it's finally getting its break that was long deserved, should have been, you know, a long time ago. First, you got to, you know, prove to the people, other wrestlers, the guys in your training class, that you want to be here just as much as them, and you're going to work your butt off, if not like as much as them or harder than them. And then, you know, getting yourself booked, you have to, unfortunately, like, it's also not just based on skill, but it's based on your looks. So you have to have the look. So it was definitely a life-changing yet stressful, you know, situation that it put me in, but it really helped my confidence and really changed who I was.
Do you think maybe that that Netflix show Glow had anything to do with the resurgence of maybe women becoming more popular? I mean, I kind of enjoyed that show. It was kind of fun.
Oh, I really liked that show, but I think the women's revolution happened before that show. You know, it should have. The Glow Girls should have, I think, been acknowledged earlier before all that. But I think, like, the reason maybe Glow got, like, the Netflix series started was because women were actually making an impact in wrestling, and people saw that it was actually becoming something that people got interested in. I at first wouldn't watch Glow because I know a few of the original Glow Girls, and I didn't want to, like, you know, be biased. And then a few people told me to finally watch it, and I finally sat down and watched it, and I was blown away by it and loved it.
I loved Glow, and I loved the representation it did all around. I mean, I grew up watching that show, and I enjoyed a lot of the characters immensely. Maybe some more than I realized for other reasons, but I was a young kid, so I didn't know. But when you work a match, I mean, Glow had a great representation of faces and heels. Would you rather have the crowd boo you, or would you rather have the crowd cheer you?
Well, I mean, it depends. I'm a heel pretty much everywhere I go, except for a few select shows, because I'm a 5'10" tall girl, and most wrestlers are shorter than me. So sometimes I'm kind of the intimidating, body in the ring. It's always nice to be cheered because, it sells more merch, but it's more fun to be heel and get people mad at you because it's, I don't know, just pulling that reaction out of people really gets me going.
Well, I mean, you have the NWO and Stone Cold Steve Austin to thank for that, right? I mean, being the bad, and The Rock really, being the bad guy became cool, in the late 90s. Before, I'm sure that it was hard to sell shirts as a heel, but then when they made it cool to be a bad guy, their stuff took off. The crowd started cheering them even when they didn't want to. Yeah, you definitely have your crowd that is very heel based, and you definitely have your very babyface crowd, and you definitely have that mixture in between. So it's pretty just depends on the crowd, which ones they cheer for, which ones they boo for.
Got to be a good time to try and play that crowd, especially when you find one that's, pro you, whatever side you're playing. As most wrestlers, I'm sure you have some type of finishing move. What kind of describe your finishing move? And is it a lights out move, or is anyone kicked out of it?
I'm kind of going through a transition right now. My first finishing move was a big boot to the face because I have such long legs. But I've started kind of getting my confidence up with doing kind of like it's called a kryptonite crunch, which is also called, I guess, Sheamus uses it as like a white noise. And where I'll put somebody over my shoulder and act like they're like a sack of potatoes, and then flip them backwards and then fall back myself. And then I'm also kind of just now starting my own different version of a famouser. So I'm kind of like transitioning right now, but my current one is a kryptonite crunch, and I've had one person kick out of it. Yeah, I mean, out of all your matches so far, if only one person's kicked out of it, I would say that you're doing it pretty well and pretty timed. I mean, timing is everything with the finishing move, right? It's not just you've got to wait till they're worn down a certain way. You've got to wait till it's a certain point in the match, and then hopefully you can put their lights out with it. Now, that one person that kicked out on you, did you end up getting the win, or did you lose that time? No, I kind of got a little, carried away. It was a tournament match with me and this guy named Ryan Michaels. And we went out there and had a pretty awesome match. And I pulled out everything I had and even did my first ever superplex off the top. And I, kind of got mad that he even kicked out of that after my finishing. So I went and he brings out a sledgehammer, so I pulled a little Triple H and, tried to use that, and the ref took it away from me. I turned around, and Ryan ended up getting the pin on me without me being able to kick out. Yeah, is the intensity turned up when it's like a mixed tag or you're actually facing a male? It is. I mean, it's definitely harder. I, being one of the only females really in my area, I wrestle mainly males. And, so I've been trained to be as tough as the guys. I'm the only girl in my training class. And so I've been trained for it. It's definitely more nerve-wracking going out there because people automatically, a guy and a girl who's going to win. So I like changing their minds and proving people wrong.
Yeah, well, if there's any way that feminism is going to work for me, that's the way, getting women to beat guys' asses in a wrestling ring. That works. As a wrestler, you're like a rock band / superhero, and you get to travel all over the place and take your skills and your show everywhere. It even took you as far as England. How was that? What was that like going overseas to wrestle, and how did the match go? Well, first of all, it was freezing. England in December, very cold. It was, amazing. I got to, it's always been a dream of mine just to wrestle out of the country. So getting to do that within my first 2 years of my career was amazing. And, the match, I was in a triple threat match with one of those girls, and then another girl who's been on Lucha Underground, and she was from Canada. So it was pretty fun. Like, the crowd was very different in England from here, but it was definitely a great experience, and I'll be going back soon. So that is awesome. That's great stuff. I mean, so you must be doing pretty well. You're moving up in the ranks. So that being said, what are your goals for your career? Is there any time we're going to be seeing you in the WWE or TNA in the years to come?
Well, I've done some extra talent work for WWE. I've actually done it about 6 times last year. And so I've got to do a few little like dark matches and then had a few little spots in their little skits that they do. So yeah, my 3 goals when I joined professional wrestling was wrestle in a WWE ring, wrestle out of the country, and make an impact on women's wrestling. And I got to do the first 2 in my first 2 years of my career. So I'm working on that 3rd one, and I've got quite a while to work on that.
Well, it kind of happens without you really knowing either. Like, the right people see you or the right video gets on the internet, and the next thing you know, you're standing on Raw or SmackDown, right?
Correct. Yeah, definitely.
So it's just a matter of the big break. Now, just a side question. I'd seen that you'd had some interactions with younger fans. Have all of your interactions with fans been positive, or have you gotten a little bit of guff for being a heel? When I'm a heel, I kind of overdo it. And actually, about a month ago in Kentucky, I don't remember. I think it might be Franklin, Kentucky. I actually had to get escorted out of the building because I had about 30 to 50 fans waiting outside the building to beat me up and even blocked in my car. So what exactly did you do to elicit that type of reaction?
Well, I chased the baby face out of the ring because I was mad. And as I was going, a older lady swung at me. She didn't hit me, but she swung. And you know how some of those fans can get. So I saw that she had a plate of nachos, and I just maybe sort of flipped it, and it went all over her.
So do you have to pay for their nachos when you do that?
No.
Did you get any nacho cheese on your fingers and you could at least have a snack on your way out? I mean, that's got to be a blast sometimes to do. When some people they know they're there for entertainment and they're going to watch something. And when they take it that seriously, I mean, doesn't that kind of bother you a little bit? You want them to take it somewhat seriously because then they're going to get involved and have more fun. But when they get to that level where they're going to attempt to maybe hurt you, which could hurt your career, isn't that a little bit more problematic?
Yeah, and that was really my first time ever getting a reaction like that. So at first, when I got in the back, I was scared that I was going to get yelled at and all that. But it actually was a complete different reaction in the back, and basically we had to wait an hour for the people to leave, and people were still waiting in their cars to see if I would come out.
I was at MSG, and the main event was The Rock versus Triple H. And for whatever reason, Stephanie was coming out with The Rock, and Triple H was already in the ring. And some guy jumped down from the stands and pushed Stephanie. And that guy got a beating from both The Rock and Triple H within an inch of his life. It was one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen. I mean, people need to realize that you guys are working. And to come at you in an aggressive way, regardless of what the theater of the mind is as far as the wrestling match, you're going to get hurt either by security or by wrestlers or by other fans. It's just not a great idea to get involved in that type of thing.
No, if I can pull that kind of reaction out of you, I've done my job.
Exactly. If you're getting booed, you're golden. You're absolutely golden. What were we going to ask, Edgy?
Yeah, so one of the things that's always interested me are the outfits that wrestlers wear, right? They're intricate, they're ornate, they're beautiful, they're just neat to see. But where does one acquire said things, especially the boots? I don't know. I've always had a thing that they somehow look like really cool and really comfortable at the same time.
My first 3 pairs of wrestling gear were made by 2 different people. And then recently I've kind of just changed up my gear a little bit. And I got one from an actual rave place online. And then I also cut up a shirt for my other one. And, Spencer's is always a good place to look for that too. And, I just kind of made my own gear this past time. And then boots-wise, you can just type in wrestling boots online and you can find them.
Yeah, you seem to be able to get anything online anymore. All you got to do is type it in and it's in your house 2 or 3 days later. It's simply
exactly.
odd. One of your partners in crime and also your partner in life He's also a wrestler. How is Cody's career going, and are either one of you within the title hunt?
His career is going pretty good. I mean, it's always been really good. He just got a opportunity to be a guest trainer at WWE Performance Center back in February, so it's definitely on the rise. That's
fantastic. That's quite the rub there. Did he enjoy the experience working for them?
Oh, God, yeah.
Right now, that's the gold standard in wrestling. If you're looking at as far as eyes on the product, I mean, if you look all over the world, though, I mean, there's Ring of Honor and New Japan, and there's a bunch of other federations that are just as good, but not as well known as the WWE. But on top of being a great follow, Shawna, on social media, you've also had a new amazing T-shirt, and it looks like you have some merch coming out. Where can our listeners find that T-shirt and you online?
You can find me on Facebook. You just, type in my name, send me a friend request, or direct message me regarding the shirt. I'll take PayPal and all that, and then I'll mail it to them. Or, come see me at a show, and then you can get all my merch and all that stuff there.
That was fantastic. Thank you for calling in, Shawna. We will keep eyes on your career, and if you ever have a big match coming up, feel free to call and promote it with us. And, have Cody or the rest of the 5 Most Wanted call in anytime they want.
Perfect. Sounds great. Thank you.
IG, she was just fantastic, and I really appreciate when people take time just to kind of come out and have a conversation with us like that.
What a great personality. There's been a big resurgence in pro wrestling lately, and it's been mostly for the better. They're still holding on to a lot of the old people that, quite frankly, can't hang anymore, but they're starting to embrace the newer generation of wrestlers. So I think there could be a very good chance we see people like Shawna, the stubborn angel herself, coming on to WWE or TNA sometime soon. And it's just exciting when you get new blood that is just passionate about the sport.
Oh, absolutely. And I've watched some of her matches via YouTube and on her Instagram, and she really can perform. She is an up-and-coming performer. She's fast, she's agile, and it does have a size advantage on most of her opponents. Well, actually, I was going to tell you, just recently, IG, I went to a concert, and was a pretty good one. It was down near Philly, and there was a bunch of bands. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here, and please, everybody, just bear with me because I'm going somewhere with this. Every band came out and they absolutely killed it. The group called Churches, which is rather unknown. There's a lot of unknown groups. Portugal the Band being probably the biggest of them all. And they came out and they performed a really, really good set. Opened up with Beavis and Butthead mocking their own video, which I absolutely loved. But the headliner was 30 Seconds to Mars. Now, 30 Seconds to Mars plays a lot of radio-friendly rock. I'm sure you've heard of them, right?
Yeah, of course I've heard of 30 Seconds to Mars. They're a pretty big band.
And their lead singer is Jared Leto, the superstar that was just Joker in the Suicide Squad and a bunch of other stuff. I believe either won or was up for an Academy Award in Dallas Buyers Club. He's a good actor. Fight Club, you could go on all day naming his credentials. But his band, maybe not so much. And I was a little apprehensive about going to see them. I went, they came out. First off, the first thing I noticed was there was an extension to the stage, and no other band would use it. So about the third or fourth band, somebody finally made a comment about it, like, hey, sorry, guys, I would use this, but I'm not allowed, which absolutely drove me crazy because that means that was put there specifically for 30 Seconds to Mars, and I understand that they're the headliner, but come on. Is another smaller band going to outshine you because they're closer to the crowd or coming out and showboating out on this little extension of the stage? And then they came out and they played about 4 songs into their set, and it's all, I was just confused by the whole thing. But the kicker of it all is they gave certain fans, which all seemed to be towards the front, these flags, and they did nothing but wave them. And I was in the second row, mind you, and I could not see the show. That absolutely drove me crazy. Is it really worth it to impede the view of everybody else around you so you get a little bit of a few inches on your dick because people have flags in your crowd? I just don't understand it. I don't understand why they would do it. I would not advise anybody listening to go see them. And, I ended up leaving about, I'd say 5 or 6 songs into their set, but you would never know because all the songs are all crowd participation. Like he would start, and I don't mind people going to the crowd, but when it's so interactive that I feel like we're playing Simon Says, it drives me absolutely crazy.
I don't see what the point in doing that to the crowd is. Like, I didn't pay And normally I pay pretty good money because I want to have a good place to be in the concert. So I'm talking $100 a ticket, typically around that range. And I didn't pay that money so I could sing the song. I want to listen to you sing the song, man. I want to see you put on the show. You know, I've been to some that have been great. You know, you and I both went to Rob Zombie. Great concert. Little bit of crowd participation, mostly Rob and his band doing their thing, and I loved it. But then I've been to some other ones where they're like, everybody stand up, everybody wave left. You know, come on. I don't need sit, stand, kneel like I'm going to church here. This is just entertain. You know, we'll get up and we'll sing and we'll clap and we'll raise our hands if you're putting on a good show. But handing out flags, my goodness, you just trying to punish everybody that didn't get there first? Because, you know, people are pushing their way to those seats, right? I'm sure that wasn't like they just bought their tickets the first day early and got the front row seats. They got there early, and that's how they got there.
Yeah. I mean, you pay for a ticket and you expect to be, and you pay for a ticket close and you expect to be able to see. Another thing I found funny about the whole show was, for whatever reason, their longtime guitarist left the band. And when they come on, it's just him and the drummer. And I was a little confused. I'm like, are they playing pre-taped guitar tracks? And it turned out they weren't. They had some poor guy that they stuck off in the corner of the stage in dark clothing, in the shadows, playing guitar. And I just didn't understand why they did that to that guy. I mean, at least I'm sure he's being well paid to be there. I'm sure he's doing that. But let him have a little stage time. Let him interact with the fans. I mean, maybe he doesn't win the search and become the new guitarist permanently, but what would be the harm in having that guy out front with you, even if he's not a permanent member of the band?
That's not the first time that's ever happened in a band either, where you get somebody that's either just filling in for a part of the tour or other person left and you got a new band member. It's happened. I mean, Van Halen's been through how many different people on their band? They're still going fine. It's not a problem. You know, the only thing I could see that would be reasonable if it's like Slash and he doesn't want to be known with these people, so he's standing in the shadows so that people don't associate him with 30 Seconds to Mars. If it's something like that, I got you. I understand. But if it's the band themselves saying, we don't want to put you out front with us because, you know, people expect Joe Blow, the regular guitarist, and he's not there, you know, you got to think about this a different way, people. You got to embrace what you got. And, you know, I liked the band. They've had a couple of good songs. Jared Leto was great in Dallas Buyers Club, but I hated him as the Joker in Suicide Squad. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the downfall for Mr. Leto himself, but that's okay. I mean, you know, if that's the kind of thing they want to do, then the band isn't long for this world.
Well, on top of all that, he came out dressed like Macho Man Randy Savage, which ties into the whole Shawna interview. And he did nothing but raise his arms and spin around like Macho Man. I wasn't quite sure what he was aiming for there. I mean, it was a cool robe and cool presentation when it was done in the 90s during the King of the Ring. But I'm paying good money. You're the headliner. I want a little bit more than me doing all the work and you standing there and just kind of posing. It comes down to it, and you like the band, you like the band. Music is very subjective. But if you have a choice of 30 Seconds to Mars or anybody else, I would choose just about anybody else at this point.
There was an essay released by actor Chloe Dykstra, the former ex of Chris Hardwick from The Talking Dead, At Midnight. He started the Nerdist website and everything, describing an emotionally abusive relationship who she said she supported as he went through a mildly successful podcaster to a powerhouse CEO of his own company. She didn't mention him by name in her piece, but everybody knows it's got to be Chris Hardwick.
Yeah, this is unfortunate. And I don't like to cast aspersions. I never like to say anybody's lying because what if they're not? You know, that's like whenever somebody's sick at work and everybody's like, oh, he's not sick, he's doing this. I don't know whether he's sick or not. And I don't know if Chris Hardwick did these things or not. I know that the timing of this issue is very, very troubling to me. You wait till his career's at a fever pitch, and then you bring up things from years and years and years ago. It worries me a little bit, IG. Did the timing seem suspect to you?
Yeah, and it really did. And, you know, it's a thing that's been happening quite a bit recently where everybody has to have some kind of story about somebody big. And, like, everybody's saying this stuff happened 10 plus years ago. Everybody's saying, but he did these horrible things. I don't have any proof, although Chloe says she has both texts from him that explain it and video evidence that she just refuses to release, which, I mean, if you really have the evidence, then let's get it out. Let's show us that you're not lying. But I don't know. It just seems like people are jumping on a very important movement. The Me Too movement, I think, is very important because there have been a lot of people that have had to sacrifice things or been put in awkward situations by people of power, especially in Hollywood. And to jump on that bandwagon in the way that she did, it seems convenient. And I don't know. I guess there were some texts released from Chris himself saying that kind of refuted that completely, showing the things that she said shortly after they broke up. It just doesn't look like the way that somebody was so abusive and so rude and mean and everything else that's the kind of response you would get. So I'm still kind of torn on what could be true and what's not, but it seems like on this one more than others, I'm more torn toward Chris probably didn't do anything. Maybe she's just finding a way that maybe she can try and rub him for some money, or maybe she tried and he said no, and this was her revenge tactic.
Ryan George has now joined us, so I'm going to go ahead and boot him in.
Hey,
Ryan,
how are you guys?
feelings? Hey, man, any feelings on the whole Chris Hardwick situation?
I mean, it's as usual. It's a tough situation to judge because it seems like it's very much a he said, she said. I do think that, I don't think that anything that's happened since, whether it be the text messages or anything, kind of proves one way or another that she, is in it for the money or is making things up. I think that it's still fairly consistent with somebody who's been in an abusive, controlling relationship. And so it's really hard to judge if you're kind of on the outside of those situations. I think that, unfortunately, we knew that with the Me Too movement, there would be, there are going to be some casualties. There would be some situations where somebody, we're at the point where I feel like we have to give women the benefit of the doubt in these situations. Obviously, want due process. We don't want to, ruin someone's career over, accusations if it's just that. But I think we should give the benefit of the doubt, and we should. I like Chris Hardwick, so I don't want to believe he's capable of that. But I also don't want to dismiss it outright. So it's just a tough situation. I hope the truth comes out at some point. But I don't think anything that's happened one way or another, clearly says, he must have done it or he didn't. I would say that the silence in the community is interesting, and I wonder, partly is the silence because, he really is an asshole and his friends you're not going to stick up for him, or is the silence because people maybe want to stick up for him, but they're like, yeah, I'm not messing up my career to stick up for him. So I also find it kind of a little bit interesting that there has been kind of silence, mostly from community, his friends, seemingly his friends outside of his, wife and his mother-in-law. It seems like there's been relative silence regarding it.
And you would hope that his wife and his mother-in-law would come out in his defense.
Yeah.
What are you turning into, some kind of feminist?
Actually, no, I'm not, because I'm not turning into a feminist. I consider myself a feminist, and the claims in this accusation were vague, and they were masked, and they were years old, and they would be hard to prove other than what proof she says she has that she won't release, which I'm calling complete bluff there. But what it sounds to me like they had is an extremely dysfunctional relationship, and I don't know if that exactly falls under the category of our business. If he didn't sexually assault her or physically assault her and there was no crime committed and law enforcement wasn't called, I mean, over a long period of time, a lot of dysfunctional relationships go this way. The pressuring for sex, the everything that she named in the complaint just sounds like that they weren't right for each other. They were two dysfunctional people at the time, and they didn't belong together. I hope the accusations aren't true, but if they are, I hope Chris sought help. I mean, I don't care who you are. You guys are two of the nicest guys I know, but we could go to any of your exes and spin 10% of the truth, and they could say some really brutal shit about you, but should you lose your job? Should you lose your gig over an accusation of a past relationship?
No. And, and that's the thing is it's all accusation unless like you said at the time, somebody was called. Like if there was some type of intervention started or anything and there's an actual official record, then yeah. And I'm trying to hide it or mask it, then sure, come down with pitchforks and fire and do it up. But, we all know what the laws are. We all know what is okay and what isn't okay. And I mean, even if I tried to do something to my wife that isn't okay, she knows she can call the police anytime. And
yeah,
I'm surprised she hasn't yet.
Well, yeah, I think it brings up an interesting situation because you want to, what are the lines for a relationship and what should be public and what shouldn't be public and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And even if you're looking at the accusations and the article, it paints a picture of a pretty shitty person and a pretty controlling person, but whose business is that? And I don't know what the answer really is to that. Like what should we know? We kind of go back to like even, the Aziz Ansari situation where it was like clearly, it seemed more like just a bad date, but he got raked over coals for that a little bit. And I think for the most part, it seems like he's not going to lose his career, but that was, a rough stretch, and so I guess we're kind of figuring out now, like, where are those limitations and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate when it comes to how someone is in a relationship.
Well, and you said it exactly. And, the difference is people that are more in public vision than we are. Right. So, things that we do because we're not so much in public vision don't get put on a blog where we get talked about endlessly all over the world. These people can do the exact same thing you or I do, and all of a sudden somebody's like, "Oh my God, he ate chicken chow mein. How crazy is that?" Yeah. It can be just the most minute detail. I mean, it's like they're not allowed to have a bad day, a bad date, not get along with somebody because someone's going to just beat them up on social media everywhere they go. It's unfortunate and it's terrible, and I don't know when people are going to realize the amount of decorum that you have to hold for somebody just not being right or being compatible with another person. Because that's really all it is. If you're not, some people are in relationships for years and then figure out finally that they're not compatible. And that's what it seems like with Chloe and Chris is that, they had a years-long relationship, but they just didn't find out early enough because maybe they just liked other things about each other so much that they didn't realize that their relationship was toxic. Chris took the high road and didn't say anything, but Chloe decided years later that she's going to go out and hit him with a hammer.
I agree, IG. I mean, it's troublesome to say the least. I really hope that they get it worked out.
So my next story comes from here in Minnesota. A woman was at a music festival and had a memorable time. She got her head stuck in a truck's exhaust pipe for 45 minutes. Caitlin Strom was at the Winstock Music Festival in the town of Winstead on Friday, 2 weeks ago, to go where few people have gone before, and that's up the back of a tailpipe. She spent about 45 minutes inside the pipe and was rescued when firefighters came and used a power saw. Surprisingly enough, the McLeod County Sheriff's Office then cited her for underage drinking.
I don't know how this is physically possible. I don't know how she possibly did this. How small is she? I mean, does she have a pinhead? I would have to see a visual of this to believe it.
I saw the visual of it. It was one of them big muffler things that, rednecks like to put on their trucks, make it look like they have a huge exhaust. But, yep, her head was right inside of it.
Well, why don't we get to some Incredibles before we run out of time, and we'll get back to news. The second movie started much like the first, with the Incredibles being a lot like the Rodney Danger of superheroes. They get no respect, and the more they try to help the city, the more the whole thing just turns against them, being sued, threatened with jail. I mean, the movie brought in over $600 million the first time around. And after its second week now, the second movie has brought in over $400 million. But after 14 years, was Incredibles 2 a necessary movie?
In this world of, where superhero movies rule, considering that the first Incredibles was among the best superhero movies ever made, I would say, yeah. I don't know that any of this is necessary, but it's certainly a movie that, given the right amount of time and care, I would have loved to have seen a sequel because it was a great movie. And there were so many places you could go with it that I definitely think of all the superhero movies we've gotten over the past 2 decades. This is certainly one that could use a sequel.
IG, do you think it was as good as the first?
Well, that's the rub, isn't it? There have been a few times, because this is a Disney movie, but it's also a Pixar movie. There's been a few times where Pixar goes back to the well and does really well. I mean, look at all the Toy Story movies. They get progressively better as you go along. But then you look at some other things like the Monsters, Inc. movies, Monsters University, not as good as the first one. The Cars movies, typically not as good as the first one. So, that's where you run into a problem, because it's really hard to recreate that magic with with some of these properties. I don't know if it's quite as good, but it's pretty close. I did enjoy it, and I think it's pretty close to the first Incredibles.
Yeah, no, I would have to agree. I think it builds, it's hard to say. It's always hard to compare like a sequel to an original, but I really think it builds on what was the strengths of the first. And I think if there was anything lacking, maybe it was just that, not quite as compelling of a villain. But I think when, it just gets the family dynamic so well, I think it does some, the visuals are light years ahead of the first, which itself had great visuals. And I just think it gets so many things right about, the superheroes and the action scenes and the family dynamic. I think it does so many things well that I definitely put it up there, equal to, if not better than the first.
Well, that brings up some great questions as well, Ryan. Like the beginning of the movie is just a botched robbery that, destroys half the town. And I mean, would superheroes be more destructive for what they're worth? Or do you think that if we could have them in reality, would it help or hurt more as far as property destruction, lost lives? I mean, sometimes is it just better to let the bad guys win?
It does bring up a great question. I would say no. I think you need to counter that. There's, at some point, the bad guys do bad enough things that, no amount of insurance or infrastructure is gonna protect it. So I think, if you have a world with supervillains and you have heroes that are capable of stopping them, I think you need to equip yourself with them to stop them. I don't buy into that. The kind of idea that let's just sit back and we'll let insurance pay for it. I don't think it would work, because the villains would just escalate as far as they possibly could until, they're literally, taking over the world, which seems to be their objective all the time.
Well, what better objective is there than taking over the world? That's the right one to have, isn't it? I mean, and the only one keeping us safe from all this, ladies and gentlemen, is Ryan George. He's got his underwear on the outside, and, he was just overseas, and that's because he was fighting crime. So, he's got to go when he's got to go. So he's not always here, and that's why. And now I don't know what his superhero name is, though, but if you see somebody that's under 5'7", that's probably him.
just barely under 5'7".
5, 6.5. The half is important.
Need that half.
Yeah, when you start telling the half sizes, you know that you're a little too short. I think his name would be Nice Guy Ryan, and his superpower would be just showing people random spots around the city. Like, he would just tour guide for free. Like, he would find lost tourists all over New York City and just lead them, as long as you're willing to crosswalk with him. Because my man Ryan will crosswalk like a motherfucker. I mean, you better be, if you're with him, you better be on your A game and moving, because he's going to run across right in front of a bus, and it's like playing a game of Frogger, hanging out with Ryan George. IG, the family sports a variety of superpowers, including super strength, speed, stretching. I mean, the baby had everything. But if you had an opportunity to have a superpower other than podcast, what would it be?
Ooh, you know what? There's so many options to choose from. I mean, you could choose flight. You could choose super strength, super intelligence. A lot of things might be great. Teleportation would be awesome. I don't know. Probably invisibility, so I could just go wherever I wanted to go. Just like if I want to go see a concert, I just walk in because you can't see me go there. Anything I want to go to, I can just be at. That might be a good one. So I think invisibility.
I feel like we went over this question at some point. Probably time travel. I think I answered that before too, but I think time travel would be my superpower if I could have one.
Ooh, he wants to be Cable. You're too short, Ryan.
Yeah. Well, so is Josh Brolin, but that didn't stop him from CGIing an electronic arm on his body. There's so many good ones. Not to geek it up too much, I would like super speed or invisibility. I think those would be my favorite.
Speed has its advantages. You don't ever have an excuse to be late anymore.
Ryan, you're the closest thing we know to a superhero, but if being a superhero was illegal, could you just sit by on your hands while crime was out of control and not do anything out of fear of being prosecuted or possibly sued?
If I had superpowers, probably, yes. If I had the superpower, if I had the powers and the ability to stop it, No, I wouldn't do it out of fear of being prosecuted. You know, at the end of the day, worst case is you go to jail. But if I have those powers, it's not like people are going to mess with me. So no, I would have to use the powers if I saw it as me being the difference between protecting people's lives and them just kind of being a statistic. You know, I would definitely jump in.
What was that Will Smith movie where he was a superhero?
I like that movie too. I know it didn't do all that great.
Hancock, right? Like, you know, they put him in jail. He put one guy's head up the other guy's ass, and like he like jumped out of the jail to get the basketball back and jump back in. So I mean, if you've got the superpowers, they can put you in there, but what can they do to you? Nothing really. So, you know, pretty soon, like if you're in a world where you're a superhero, and even if you weren't a great superhero, but you were like saving people, eventually they're going to need you back. So even if they prosecute you, they might turn around and go, well, you know, maybe we should let him out because we can't handle this particular bad guy. So yeah, I think I'm not sitting on my hands either.
Well, let's talk a little Elastigirl. I mean, to help her family, she had to leave it. To enforce the law, she had to break it. IG, you were a stay-at-home dad for a good stretch of time. I mean, could you identify with what Mr. Incredible struggle was, especially with a young child at home?
I looked just like him. It was just anything I could do to get them to stop whatever was going on, cookies, ice cream, whatever. And I was tired. I was beat up. I was, children, come on, please. I don't know. And the math joke is truer than anyone would want to believe. Oh my God, my children have come home, tried to show me that, and they're like, well, I don't understand this, Dad. And I'm like, I don't understand what you're showing me either. I can show you how I used to do it, but you're going to get in trouble. So I can't help you. I don't understand that math. Why did they change math? I've said those words. Math is math. Why did they change math?
Well, that was the one promise that the current administration did say that I agreed with completely, was the downfall of Common Core. I mean, I know people are split on that, but math is math. It should never change. Crime fighting has become quite a family affair. But, Ryan, if your wife and your kids had superpowers, would you let them actively fight crime, or would you make them stay home?
I would probably want to make them stay home. I think there's just a natural part of you that would want to protect them. And knowing that it's dangerous, I think it would be really tough for me to allow them to kind of put themselves in harm's way, you know, realistically. I think it also maybe depends a little bit on what kinds of powers they have. Like, seems like, you know, Elastigirl kind of can't die. Like, so maybe that would inform my decision a little bit. But I would have, and like Jack, I feel like what can you do to him? So maybe I wouldn't mind throwing him in there, but yeah, I think depending on the powers, it'd be tough to allow you know, a close family member into the line of fire.
Now you got to think though, his wife, like, they met as superheroes, like, you know, they were already having independent lives as superheroes, and that's how they met. So now, if you had met your wife that way, are you going to tell her now she has to sit at home? I mean, I don't think so. She probably kick your butt then.
Fair enough. In that case, yeah, you wouldn't. No, but I think if I had already, you know, if we both were developing the powers at the same time, then I might be a little reluctant.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the wife can come along, and I've met some people I think might have superpowers, and God be it for me to stop them for trying to stop crime. But I think your kids need to stay at home until they're at least of legal age. I mean, the whole passing the baby back and forth during the whole thing, I know it was done to be funny, but a little unrealistic. Get a sitter for the kids. They can fight crime when they can buy cigarettes. One of my favorite parts of the movie, and you and I talked about this off the air, IG, was Jack versus the raccoon. I mean, what was your thoughts on that epic showdown? And was it a little bit of overkill having him have every single power ever known to man just for comedic purposes?
No, I don't think it was. I think it worked. I think it worked beautifully. It was probably my favorite part of the entire movie, and it was just absolutely hilarious because, like, there were some reactions from the raccoon that is like, oh my God, what now? It was almost human-like reactions. But it was just hilarious to watch. I really enjoyed that, and it kind of gave us all a glimpse of part of what Jack is capable of. And he's way more impressive and powerful than any other superhero we've seen in that universe thus far.
Ryan, what did you think of Screenslaver as the villain and the big reveal of who her identity was?
If there was a weak part of the movie, I feel like it was the villain and her motivation. It seemed kind of a stretch. Like they were really, and something that at the same time as it being a stretch, something we've kind of seen before, like parents die and you hold a grudge against the hero for whatever reason. I kind of had a feeling it was going to be her early on, and that proved to be true. I think it wanted us to believe that it was Bob Odenkirk. I forget the name of his character, but it wanted us to believe that. But I had a feeling it was going to be her. And I wasn't wrong. And I think that was probably the weakest aspect of the movie, but very loosely kind of say that, because otherwise I thought it was a great movie, outside of that. And so it's kind of a nitpick to say, okay, the villain wasn't great, but I just kind of didn't really buy her motivation and seemed kind of generic, super villain motivation.
Telegraphed a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I really didn't like that portion of the movie, although I did think it was an intriguing villain up until that point of the reveal. And I was like, they did a little bit of switcheroo with who it might have been. And, but I did like the whole mind control aspect. I did like the goggles. I thought it worked very well visually. IG, obviously her motive was revenge for letting her parents die. And she used mind control to control everybody, leaving the kids to save the day. Going into that, the kids versus, X amount of superheroes, did you think they had a chance?
Without Jack, I think they'd have been hard pressed. I mean, all right, so Dash is pretty good because he's fast, right? Violet with, it's kind of like, what is it? Mrs. Incredible or Invisible Girl or whatever from Fantastic Four. That's kind of her power set. But she seems like she's not properly motivated to do all this stuff, right? So I think that Jack's pure innocence allowed him to be strong enough to do whatever needed to be done there. And it really kind of did lend itself to that, because it turned into Jack just wanted to see Mom and pulled the goggles off, and that started the whole rescue. So yeah, I think that building of Jack earlier, kind of that's what helped everything happen. And Edna Mode, basically discovering how everything works with Jack just worked perfectly. So I think it all kind of played out. They explained enough of it to make it work. So yeah, it worked, and I think that's feasible.
Well, I love that aspect of it, that you had, all of the heroes, minus the kids, were under mind control, and that the fact that they that it was the kids and that they had to kind of grow up and become heroes was really great. I loved that aspect of it, and that they had to kind of save the day on their own. And I thought it plays out beautifully, and I really enjoyed that kind of aspect of the movie.
Yeah, it was underdog, and there was a little bit of suspense involved. And obviously, the good guys are going to win the day because it's a Disney movie. But I did like how the kids had to be inventive, and Jack accidentally, kind of undid the whole plot. So it was very good that way. In the end, Ryan, the good guys win, peace is restored, the bad guy was defeated, and supers are legal again. What were your thoughts on the movie and your rating?
I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I think the first one was one of the best superhero movies ever made, and like I said earlier, I think this really takes some of the strengths and really builds on it. I loved. It was a bit subversive with what could expect from a movie like this. I loved, it didn't feel long, and I love the family dynamic. I love the scenes with them and their powers were really great, because all of the heroes, not just the family, but all the heroes in the movie and villains, use their powers in creative ways. And when they do battle each other, they were actually battling, power for power, instead of some of these kind of super fast cuts, people punching each other in the face stuff we get in some of the other superhero movies. I think it was really, inventive use of the skills and powers, and really, clever in how they allowed people to kind of fight, the characters to fight each other with what they had at their disposal. So I really enjoyed the action scenes. I thought the story was great. Again, I didn't love the villain, but whatever. I thought otherwise the movie had tons of charm. It was really funny. And again, to me, it's the best superhero movie of the year. So I'm going to give it a 9.25.
Wow.
Really, really enjoyed it. Yeah.
That's a good rating. I liked it a lot too. It looks like a Pixar movie looks, which is generally incredible. They've nailed animation to a T. with the exception of the cartoonish looks, this could be a real universe. And I love everything that Pixar does. I'm a Pixar mark. And, generally I can't watch a Pixar movie without at least one tear rolling down my face. This one had a couple feel moments in it too. Feel like a jerk every time I'm watching it. And it's like my kids were out of town with their uncle when this movie came out. So I just went on my own, sat in a movie theater full of kids watching The Incredibles. And that's fine. I don't have any shame. I'll do it again. I like the movie a lot. I think the first one was better. Not going to go quite as high as Ryan. I think an 8.5 from me, but I really did enjoy it. And I firmly believe, like, if you like superhero movies, animated movies, Disney movies at all, any of those categories, you should probably go see this. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, anyone that knows me knows I'm not the biggest fan of these type of movies. But it did bring up some interesting real-world problems and made me think a little bit about the family dynamic with superheroes and the legality of being a superhero in its everyday life. But for the most part, I enjoyed Incredibles. It was entertaining. It was a good time. That's for you, IG. I gave it about a 7.5. I mean, let's hope it doesn't take another 14 years for a sequel. And now I have to go back and watch the first one. IG, do you got any more news before we go?
I got a couple of things. One thing, you called this one, and here it is. Ben Affleck will no longer portray Batman in the character's upcoming solo films. And they're not sure whether or not Affleck appears to be coming as Batman in any supporting appearances for other characters. Still technically possible, but it's seeming unlikely.
Well, we called this from the very beginning. He didn't fit the role. He didn't look the role. He didn't act the role. He didn't want to be in the role. I think it was one of those things that sounded like a very, very good idea to start. And then that first movie bombed, and he started getting those Geely vibes. And if you don't know what Geely is, I suggest you go look it up because it's a career ender. And then next thing you know, he's got one foot out the door because he went from wanting to write, direct, produce, be the man in the solo Batman film to maybe I'll just act in it. And right away, I knew that was kind of the end for it. I don't want to go too long on this, but offer the role to Ryan George right now. Sign him up for a 10-deal picture. I don't care who the fuck you put in this role, but I'm tired of you switching Batmans every couple films. Get it straightened out. Batman is one of my favorite characters, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of this fooling around. And this is why you'll never catch up to Marvel, and they should just focus on one or two picture arcs and then move on to the next thing. We haven't got a clear-cut Batman movie yet, and now we're switching again. What do you think about it, Ryan?
Yeah, I agree. I think, I'm one of those that was a little bit more on the side of, like, I thought Ben Affleck was fine as Batman. I don't think he was as good as Christian Bale, or Kevin Conroy, or Michael Keaton for that matter. But I thought he was fine. I didn't not like him, the character. He looked fine in the cowl and, portrayed the character perfectly fine, but I think there are plenty of other actors out there, whether they're well known or unknown, that can portray the character depending on what storyline you want to pick from or draw from, or what time period of his life you want to work with. So, I'm fine with him not being the character. I think it's the larger issue is DC and just trying to mimic, Marvel when, there are so many great stories out there. Just tell good stories, just write good stories, tell good stories. Don't worry about a connected universe. And, get some fresh blood that wants to be in that position. And I hope they're going the right route with, I think it's Matt Ryan who's directing and writing, whatever is coming up. There's a lot out there and they can do a good job. At the end of the day, I'd love to see, go a little while without any Batman and just kind of reassess the situation, but it's too valuable of an IP to do that. So we know we're going to get Batman. So I think we just need to have it in the hands of somebody who understands the character, wants to do justice by the character. And I hope we get, just get somebody who wants to be in that role, who fits the role physically, and get something good out there. But yeah, I'm glad to see Affleck not there because I don't think he cared to be in it after, like you said, after Batman Superman. I think he was checked out, and so I want somebody in there who wants that role.
And of course, Ryan would agree with that because quite honestly, you just basically offered him the role. If you had the power, you'd be like, yeah, let Ryan do this, and he's like, yeah, let Ryan do it. So I've got one more news story. It's the saddest news story I've read in a while. A building collapse at the Barton 1792 distillery in Bardstown sent thousands of barrels of aging liquor crashing to the ground. About 9,000 barrels of aging Kentucky bourbon and whiskey were affected. I'm so sorry, ladies and gentlemen. That's a lot of whiskey to be putting away in the wrong way.
Do you think there's time to get down there and maybe soak some up off the ground before it's completely gone? I mean, I would
soak some up in a towel or something.
Yes, I would hate for that to. I'll get a long straw. I'll dig a hole, whatever I need to do to get at some of this free booze. I saw pictures of that, and unlike you crying during The Incredibles, it actually brought a tear to my eye, that visual of all that good quality whiskey on the ground. I felt like that Indian in the Don't Pollute commercials. I just turned around and I had to put my phone down and go repose myself. So not a good day for whiskey drinkers. What do you think, IG?
And not a good day indeed. I love some aged whiskey. It is just one of my favorite things. I have a small oak barrel in my house that I can buy kind of some even cheap whiskey, put it in there for a month or two, and it drastically improves the flavor. So seeing all these beautiful barrels of whiskey just laying all over the place in that picture was just sad. And I'm hoping that they didn't lose too much of the actual whiskey and they're able to pick them back up. I mean, these are 300-pound barrels apiece. They each hold 54 gallons or something. It's insane. So I'm hoping they're able to save most of this.
Yeah, I'm not much of a whiskey drinker, so I don't have an opinion on this. I've never loved the taste of whiskey, so won't be running down there to scoop up whatever I can. It can go by the wayside as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, we found his kryptonite.
If it was muscle milk, on the other hand, he'd be right down there. He'd be bench pressing the whole factory.
Badger milk. It's full of badger milk. He'd be all over that.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this show. We want to thank Ryan for showing back up after his long trip. Maybe next week we'll get into what you actually did while you were away. And the stubborn angel herself, Shawna Reed. I hope you enjoyed the show. And until next time.
And that's it for this episode of the Cinik Radio Podcast. I'm Igrihe. We had a great time bringing you this week's show. Please send all your comments, questions, concerns, and any crazy news stories from your neck of the woods to CINIKRADIO@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at CINIKRADIO.com. Look for us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CINIKRADIO. And find us on Twitter at CINIKRADIO. Continue to like, listen, subscribe, and share this with all your friends and family. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.